It was way too close for comfort, but Louisville held off Washington in the Sun Bowl on New Year's Eve.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Thursday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville, free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Louisville outlasted Washington 35-34 in the Sun Bowl on New Year's Eve. The offense did what it needed to do. Harrison Bailey looked pretty solid. The freshman running back tandem was great once again. Caullin Lacy looked solid. Offense did what it needed to do. Defense, however, was sort of up and down, and they had their fair share of struggles in the fourth quarter, so we'll address some of those issues late in the game. And then Jeff Brohm has picked up a new football portal commitment, Minnesota wide receiver TJ McWilliams. So a lot of football talk on the show today, and I was trying my best to have more football talk on yesterday's show. However, when you get a top 10 basketball commitment and Louisville beats North Carolina, it's hard to cram everything all into one episode. So we're going to break the football talk into two episodes. We discussed sort of the main talking points of the Sun Bowl, Louisville winning 35-34. And I made it a point of emphasis to say that I know that bowl games are losing their significance to a lot of people because of the college football playoffs, because of the opt-outs. And I get that. Like, I truly do get that argument. But for me, for a program that has not been a title contender perennially, they never made a college football playoff game, a couple BCS games, but no playoff games. I'm going to celebrate bowl games. It is treated as, or it is meant to be a reward for winning at least 6 games, and I'm going to treat it as such. It's another football game, so I'm going to cheer for the team. And Louisville winning the game, it's a nice way to end the 2024 season and go into the offseason. But we're going to break down this performance a little bit more. You look to the offensive side of the ball, and the Cardinals started out pretty slow. Harrison Bailey, it took a while for him to find a rhythm, wasn't able to make a couple of passes. I think Louisville punted the ball on the first 3 possessions. First 2 were 3 and outs. The third possession, they were able to move the ball a little bit, but had to end up punting. Thankfully for the Cardinals, Taz Nicholson had the pick 6 on Washington's first possession on Damon Williams Jr. And then Louisville was able to eventually, towards the end of the first quarter, move the ball down the field, and Harrison Bailey was able to find Caullin Lacy. They were able to score one more time before half to make it 21-14. Washington ended up tying the game up at halftime. Louisville answered with 2 touchdowns on the first 2 drives of the second half. A very impressive 10-play, 87-yard drive that spanned over 5 minutes was on their first drive of the half, and then a 2-play drive that was started with Duke Watson running for 54 yards and then Caullin Lacy for 8 yards. Louisville's offense not really able to do much after that. They had a 14-point lead going into the fourth quarter, and you could tell that they were just trying to run the clock out, weren't really able to do much, and they were able to hold off the Washington Huskies. And we'll discuss the defensive side of the ball here in the next segment, but offensively, Harrison Bailey tied a Louisville Bowl record with 3 touchdown passes. Shout out to Kelly Dickey for this statistical acknowledgement. I'm reading this tweet verbatim. He and Teddy Bridgewater are the only players to accomplish that without an interception. Others with 3 touchdown passes in a bowl game are Browning Nagel, Dave Ragone, and Hunter Cantwell. So pretty good company for Harrison Bailey. I know people were wondering, well, how was he going to look in this bowl game? I would argue that, he probably looked a little bit better than I had expected. I honestly thought that Louisville was going to rotate guys. I thought Harrison Bailey was going to get some drives, and I thought Deuce Adams was also going to get some drives in this, and he didn't end up getting that because I think Harrison Bailey was playing better than expected. He ended the game 16-25, 164 yards, 3 touchdowns to no interceptions. So pretty serviceable game, was able to make some throws he struggled with, fitting the throws into the tight windows, over through a couple receivers. It wasn't the most perfect performance, but for a backup quarterback that was making, his fourth career start, first one at Louisville, you really can't ask for much more. He was at the very least serviceable and was able to move the ball down the field for the most part. Now, Washington's defense, not really the greatest defense, not the best defense that Louisville has played this year whatsoever, but I still felt like they were respectable coming into the game and, made life tricky for Bailey at times, but ultimately he ended up getting the job done. Now, I've seen some people say that, well, can Harrison Bailey compete with Miller Moss? And assuming Harrison Bailey stays, I mean, asking if he can compete with Miller Moss for QB1 snaps, I think that he's automatically going to compete. Like, you're going to have competition. You would expect Moss to be QB1, but from a formality and technicality standpoint, yes, Harrison Bailey's going to compete. Deuce Adams is going to compete. Brady Allen, Mason Mims, like there will be a competition for QB1. I fully expect Miller Moss. I'm sitting there thinking both start with the letter M. I fully expect Miller Moss to be the starting quarterback for Louisville. And don't get me wrong, I don't say this to take away any credit from what Bailey was able to do. I think that honestly, it makes you feel a little bit better because, the question this year that if Tyler Shuck would have went down, who would have stepped up in his absence? I don't really think that we had the answer to that. And even if you did, you couldn't say with certainty that you would fully expect insert player here to come in and play good right away. And I think that Miller Moss winning the job next year would be expected, but you also know that you have a guy on the bench behind Miller Moss that could come in and at least be able to contend to win football games. So I was really excited about what I saw from Harrison Bailey on Tuesday evening. The rushing attack was once again really good, 6.3 yards per carry. Isaac Brown had 18 for 99. Duke Watson, 10 for 83. That freshman tandem continued to excel. It just showed you that I really do think that you're potentially talking about the best running back tandem in the country next season. I don't think that that's far-fetched or overreacting. Like, they looked really good this year, and I imagine with another year through the offseason, getting to continue to transform their bodies and develop even more with Chris Barkley, who's a really good position coach at the running backs coach. I'm excited for these guys. I think that the sky is the limit, even though you have what's going to probably be a really good passing attack. That the rushing attack is going to be really, really good as well. And these guys are only going to be true sophomores, which is pretty nuts. Interested to see who the RB3 is going to be. But I think that we'll see that answer depending on who comes to Louisville out of the portal. Or maybe it's John Maurice Wilder, the 3-star from Florida. But nonetheless, I feel like the rushing attack was really good. Offensive line held up pretty solid. Caullin Lacy played in the bowl game. This was his first game back since announcing that he was going to redshirt the remainder of the season and opt on a full year of clean health. Has ended up announcing that he's coming back to Louisville, and he played in the Sun Bowl, and he had 3 catches for 17 yards and a touchdown, 2 carries for 10 yards and a touchdown. Now, those statistics might not necessarily jump off the page to you, but 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 receiving, I thought was pretty encouraging. And with quarterback play that's going to be able to get him the ball out in more of a quick fashion. Miller Moss is really good at taking the snap and then, firing the pass right away. Really good, quick release. And I think that that's going to bode well for getting Caullin Lacy the ball out in space. And then this was just his first game back. So to see him make some dynamic plays, I mean, the receiving touchdown where he caught the ball at like the 4-yard line. And if you go just based upon the screenshot of where he caught the ball, I mean, back to the goal line, and there was a guy already on him, and then you go back to the video and he scored off that. And I think that just goes to show you how dynamic he is, how good he is after the catch. And even though he's sort of a smaller receiver, he does have some considerable strength too. So offense did what it needed to do, scored 28 of the 35 points. one of the touchdowns was the defensive pick six, so we're not going to give credit to the offense in that regard. But they did everything that I was hoping for them to do. I wasn't expecting the Cardinals to come into this game and score 40. You just had to, temper expectations, not having Tyler Shuck, not having Ja'Cory Brooks. It was what it was. But it was still nice to see Louisville be able to wake up from a slow start and be able to move the football. Shout out to Harrison Bailey for being able to adjust and make consistent throws. I mean, none of his – I look at the throws that he made, and I wouldn't say that any of them I was ever thinking like, oh, my goodness, what a throw. And that's not disrespectful to him. He made the throws that he was supposed to make, and that's what matters. You can't really discredit that. Making the throws that you're supposed to make is something that if it was that easy, everyone will be doing it. And for a backup to come in and witness 3 straight possessions of punts and then say, you know what, let's turn it up, and then be able to start to score the football. It was nice to see. Really excited for Harrison Bailey next season, and I hope that he sticks around for the Cardinals. So offense did what it needed to do. Defense, on the other hand, it was up and down. Louisville had a 14-point lead going into the fourth quarter, and it took a huge clutch play from Antonio Watts to secure the victory for the Cardinals. We'll discuss more when we come back on this Thursday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's just thrilling to me. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Cardinal fans, thanks again for making us your first listen of the day. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day throughout 2024. I hope that you continue to do so through 2025. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. The defensive performance for Louisville, it was an interesting one. They gave up 34 points. Looking at the total numbers here, DeMond Williams Jr. went 26 of 32, 374 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. He also carried the ball 20 times for 48 yards and a touchdown. Took a couple of sacks. Jonah Coleman, 9 for 42. Overall, Louisville's rushing defense wasn't necessarily all that bad. They averaged 2.7 yards per attempt. Washington outgained Louisville by almost actually over 100. Louisville had 371 yards of total offense. Washington had 472. They converted on 6 of 15 of the third down attempts, and they got 1 of 1 on the fourth down attempts. I think that was on the touchdown on fourth down after Louisville was called for a phantom pass interference call. Overall, I felt like Louisville's defense was in bend but don't break fashion. They allowed 21 first half points. Third quarter was pretty good for the Cardinals. They didn't allow anything, and then the fourth quarter came and it felt like Louisville was just trying not to lose. Now, Washington was taking their sweet time in the fourth quarter. Like, you look at back when Washington scored in this game, it was 3:42 left when they cut the lead to 7. 3:42. Giles Jackson had a 31-yard catch from DeMond Williams Jr., and Giles Jackson was a guy that Louisville just couldn't cover all night. 11 for 161 and 4 touchdowns. Now, look, I know that the Cardinals were without Ashton Gelati. They were without Quincy Riley. Taz Nicholson left the game early with an injury. And I mean, you don't have all of your, star players. I get it. You had players enter the portal. Jared Dawson entered the portal. Like, you weren't at full strength. But neither was Washington. Washington's offense might have been a little bit, but you're playing a backup quarterback. And you let that backup quarterback throw for almost 400 yards. Freshman backup quarterback. It's kind of like the Miller Moss situation last year, where you let a freshman just throw all over you. And now Louisville had the 14-point lead. They ended up allowing the score on the long fourth quarter drive to cut it to 7. Louisville really wasn't able to get anything going offensively, and they had the last drive of the game pretty much. They got the ball back with about 2:30 to go. They moved the ball down, got the ball. I think it was a 30-yard pass to Jeremiah Hunter that got them inside of the 10-yard line. Fourth and goal from the 10-yard line. Renee Conga had the shoestring sack on third down. Fourth and goal. Williams throws it up to Jeremiah Hunter, and Ramon Mosby makes a great play on the football. And it's called pass interference. Judge McCall, I hated the call. It is what it was. But what was funny to me is that they clearly missed a couple of holds on that same drive that ended up getting Washington down inside the 10-yard line. And then I'm like, okay, you're going to let them play. It is what it is. You're going to let them play physical. And then you call that hold where they're both clearly, you call that pass interference where they're both clearly going for the football, and the offensive player is pushing off just as much as Mosby is. There's a ton of contact. And I just don't know how you could call that one way or the other. But it felt like at some point you just had to make sure the game continued, and ended up getting the free set of downs. Louisville still did what they needed to do. Stanquan Clark and MJ Griffin got a sack on first down. It looked like Williams fumbled the ball through the end zone on second down, but they ended up reviewing that and confirming the call that he was short. Third and goal was an incomplete pass, and then fourth down, Williams threw a pass to Giles Jackson for the touchdown. Washington decided to go for 2. Jed Fish said, we're going to try to win the game right here and right now. It looked like it was going to be successful because the pass to, I forget who the pass was to, but it looked like that pass was going to be successful. Antonio Watts extended all the way and was able to get a hand on the football to bat it down. And Louisville ends up staying up by 1. The onside kick was tough. They ended up getting the ball on the onside kick to run the clock out, and Louisville wins by 1 point in dramatic fashion. And that might be, not fully, painting the picture, because dramatic seems like an understatement. Defensively, it was sort of up and down. Like, you had some good moments. I'm really excited for the linebacker core next season. Stanquan Clark, Antonio Watts, TJ Capers. Not sure if TJ Quinn's going to be back. He went through senior day festivities, or activities, I should say. And there's rumors that he might not be coming back. So we'll see if that indeed ends up being the case. But it's really hard to draw inspiration from that defensive performance, because it was just like 2023, not to the full extent of USC, but you let a freshman quarterback that hadn't really started all year. He played in almost every game in some sort of fashion, but 374 yards and 4 touchdowns to a backup quarterback. He only had 6 incomplete passes. Now, Louisville they ended up with 5 sacks on the play. MJ Griffin and Stanquan Clark combined for 1. Jordan Gerard had 1. Renee Conga had 1. And Ramon Puryear as well. They also ended up with 10 tackles for loss. So they were able to get into the backfield. They didn't really allow much on the ground, but passing game ended up being a huge issue for the defense. So moving forward over the next couple of days, I'm intrigued to see, number one, if Louisville makes a change at defensive coordinator. Number 2, if they don't, will they make an announcement stating that they're going to stay with Ron English? I have my thoughts on the defensive coordinator situation. I'll talk a little bit more about them on tomorrow's show. where we'll have a weekly mailbag. We'll preview the men's basketball matchup coming up against Virginia on Saturday and much more. But that will come on tomorrow's show. For the remainder, we're going to talk about a new portal commitment, one that you really just have to trust Jeff Brohm on. We'll tell you who it is when we come back on this Thursday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of past playoff games, and I can't wait to make new memories with the updated format and extra teams involved. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I used Game Time Picks to find tickets to the North Carolina Louisville game on Wednesday. I wasn't really set on going because I partied a little hard on New Year's Eve, had a headache the next day, and I was like, do I really want to go to this game? And the Cardinals super fan in me said, of course I want to go to this game. So made the decision somewhat late and went to Game Time right before tip-off, and the tickets were continually going down, and all the great features that the app has made it so easy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Another wide receiver is coming to Louisville, one that Jeff Brohm is very familiar with. TJ McWilliams announced earlier this week that he would be transferring from Minnesota to Louisville. McWilliams spent the past 2 years with the Golden Gophers program, didn't record a single statistic in his 2-year career, appeared in 3 games this past year. 6 foot, 190-pound native of Indianapolis, Indiana, will have 3 years of eligibility remaining. Was ranked as a 3-star prospect in the 2023 class, just outside of the top 1,000. Was ranked as the 1,141st best prospect according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. Top 15 player in the state of Indiana in 2023. I told you that Jeff Brohm is very familiar with this player because he is. McWilliams was originally committed to Brohm at Purdue. When Brohm ended up taking the job at Louisville, McWilliams pivoted and stayed in the Big Ten and committed to Minnesota. Wasn't able to get much traction on the field, but 3 years remaining of eligibility. And this is one of those you just have to trust Jeff Brohm because he doesn't really have the production in the first 2 years. So Brohm is banking on the skill set that he believed in when he recruited him out of high school. In an article by Michael McCammon on Louisville's 24/7 Sports Cardinal Authority site where he breaks down this commitment. This is a quote from Alan True of 24/7 Sports national recruiting analyst. I really like how Alan breaks down the scouting on recruits. This is what he had to say. McWilliams is a smooth operator with good route running ability. We always saw him as such, but he showed a little more suddenness and run after the catch ability as a senior. He has played outside and in the slot. From a slot position, his ability to create separation with quickness and feet are impressive. He gets out of his breaks well and tracks the ball naturally without needing to slow down. True goes on to say, I think the floor is high because he is technical and will be productive as a possession guy. The ceiling is now moved to being a higher point for us because he's shown more of that big play ability. Now, I don't know when this comment was made on McWilliams, probably more so towards the end of his high school days, but this is one of those ultimate, you have to trust Jeff Brohm on this because, well, he hasn't made a single catch in 2 years. A lot of that is probably playing behind some people at Minnesota. Maybe others, it's not necessarily playing in the most pass-friendly offense. But the good news is that Louisville has the opportunity and the luxury of taking a couple receivers and allowing them to develop. Like, one thing that I know fans are a little bit antsy on is having to, replace receivers every year. And that's probably going to be the case with the portal. But you have Chris Bell and Caullin Lacy likely coming back next year. You're still probably going to go out and get another wide receiver that can come in and be that wide receiver 3, but you have Kataris Hicks and Chris Hughes as well. Some other receivers in the mix. You have time available to allow McWilliams to get acclimated with the playbook, get comfortable within the program, and look to be a contributor in 2026. Now, could he play himself into being a contributor in 2025? Well, it's definitely possible. But if he's not ready, that's okay, because you don't need him to be. 3 years of eligibility remaining. The goal is to develop him like you thought you could do when he was in high school and just have him ready for the next couple of seasons. I like this. Louisville banking on guys that they feel like they can develop that have multiple years of eligibility remaining. Now, what I've seen on social media is, well, why are the Cardinals not going after defensive guys? Why are they taking commitments from receivers? Well, they still need some receivers. They lost a lot of receivers in the portal and to the draft. I don't think anybody's arguing that Louisville doesn't need defense. I mean, everyone knows that Louisville needs defense, and they're recruiting the defensive side of the football. But just because you need defense doesn't mean you don't have other needs across the roster. And one of those needs, I think that you need some depth at wide receiver. So if you have the opportunity to go out and get that depth and to be able to go out and get some potential playmakers, then why wouldn't you do that? Just because you need defensive help doesn't mean you don't address other spots. That's not the way that Louisville's going to operate when you have to replace a good amount of the returning production via the portal. So I wouldn't really be upset about this, because the need for defense still is there. And I don't, like I said, no one's arguing that. So I like this commitment from a standpoint of continuity. He could be a multiple-year contributor. The only thing that concerns me is what concerns everyone else, and that's just that there isn't any production to go based off of. So you're going based upon potential, and it either will work out or it won't. And if it doesn't, I think that it's one of those, low risk, medium to maybe high reward type additions, because he's not being relied upon to be a guy that's going to come in right away and produce. Like, you have the luxury of giving him some time to develop. But if Jeff Brohm recruited him out of high school and now he's recruiting him out of the portal, obviously he sees something that he likes, and portal recruiting on the offensive side of the football, Jeff Brohm has knocked it out of the park. So one of those, I hate to say it, but wait and see. Hurry up and wait. But filling a depth need at wide receiver is pretty solid. But when we come back on tomorrow's show, we're going to preview the upcoming men's basketball game on Saturday against Virginia. We'll dive into a weekly mailbag, and could be some other visitors on campus this weekend that we will also discuss. That's going to wrap up this January 2nd episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. We'll see you right back here